wants it. So now you've all been notified legally that you're being recorded. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. This is just a quick training on the progress report, and it says basics, and it is pretty basic, so feel free to ask questions. That's where most of us usually learn on these. And those of you who have been doing this for a while could probably give this for us. Can everybody hear us okay?
Yep. Yes.
All right. Okay, well, the progress report is due December 1st, so hopefully most of you have reached out to the people involved at your institution to gather the data, because sometimes that's the most time-consuming part, is reaching out to everybody and setting a deadline for them to get their information back to you. And you want to make sure that you give yourself enough time to get this into us by December 1st, so that you don't have anything count against you for your reports being late. The report will include your program improvement and activities report, your budget matrix form, your budgeted breakdown of expenses, and any time and effort reports. And we'll walk through those so that we can give you a little more detail, and then you can ask questions. Please feel free to ask us. The activity and progress report is, you are just updating what you turned in with your application. So I know some of you are probably working off grants that you didn't fill out the application, so it looks a little foreign to you still. But just bring up that document in the Word form and then update it where it says December 1st on that line. And you don't have to give us a lot of detail unless you want to. We don't knock you off for not giving us too much detail. And this can be a tracking document also for you. So you just type into that part of the form, update us on what you've achieved so far. A lot of times that activity hasn't happened yet, and you can just make a note of it that this activity won't happen until the spring semester. Or if it's equipment, you can say equipment has been ordered, or it's been encumbered, or we're doing the RFP process. Just let us know where you're at. You're not going to be penalized for not having an activity done, but we do want to know that you are thinking about it, and then that it's on your radar and you haven't forgotten that you need to be paying attention to it. So again, on the activity and progress report, which is Appendix I, the only thing you would need to change on this is where it says December 1, you just put an update in that part of the form and turn that back into us. We used to make you update the funding part, but we realized that you were updating funding in 3 different places with these reports, and so you don't have to update the funding amount from what it was during the activity, because that may have changed with revisions. But you can if you want to. As I've said, we have some coordinators that prefer to keep that updated. It helps you with your records.
This is Tobias. It's also helpful in this spot if you have something to use as a quantifier. For instance, the piece of equipment is being used by X number of students. If it's been installed, if you can quantify something, this is a good place to do that.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, we've gone on to the next slide, and this kind of just talks through some of the parts that we've discussed while looking at the form. I know some of you aren't seeing our Skype window. So again, the activity and progress report is part of your original grant document. You just give a brief update of the activities and what you've done. A good best practice for you is to send out the activities to those responsible for those updates, have them fill it out, and then send it back to you. I used to cut and paste that part of the document and send it out to the different faculty or deans that were responsible for that. Make sure you give yourself time to get all of this in. Again, the grant amounts don't have to be updated anymore, and if the activity lines have been added or changed by revision, these should be updated at this time. So if you have added an activity or taken out an activity with a revision between July 1st and now, we do need you to update this part of the grant at this time. Any questions so far?
So where at do you update if you've done a revision? Like where at on that form?
If you've added a brand new activity, you would either add, there's kind of a box there. I'm going to go back. If you go back to that other page where it says line 1, if you didn't have anything in line 2, you would add the new activity there. Or if you have a grant that's you've filled up all the different line numbers that were provided, just copy and paste that. Copy one of the boxes, the whole box for the line number, and paste it at the bottom and add it as a new, it'd be example line 3.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So we give these to you in Word and Excel for that reason, so that you can modify them as needed.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. The next slide we move to is the budgeted breakdown of expenses. And the main thing to remember on this one that causes some confusion, the first column under the original budget amount, 7117, once your grant is approved, that column does not change whether you do revisions or not. So that one, just consider that column locked. The next one that says revised budget amount 12/1/17, that's the one that you're working on for this progress report. So this one should reflect the current budget and spending. So it can flux a little bit from what you had it on the original, and it should also show any revisions that you've done. So the column that says 12/1/17 is the one that you will fill out for this report. On the budgeted breakdown of expenses, it always totals up to the total of the grant. So you should always at the bottom column have a bottom line where it says grant total, always total to what you were awarded for the grant. Does that make sense to everybody?
I'm having trouble getting that second column to total up to the grant. Like it's only totaling up to really what I've spent so far, because you haven't spent everything in the grant yet. So how do you get that number to do that?
You also put in the budgeted amount, so you've obviously not spent everything that you've budgeted for. Like looking at goal 1, say you have $2,000 in there you haven't spent, but it was approved that you spend $2,000 in there. You move that $2,000 over into that column.
Oh, you do? Okay, that's probably what I'm missing then.
Right.
So
yeah, this one is kind of a hybrid one at this time. This document is it's kind of a budget, and you can put some of your spending in there too.
Okay, so maybe I need to kind of separate them out by like a different color or type of font, maybe, so I can tell what I actually spent and what I didn't spend yet, but it's still in that column.
Yeah, you can do that, and you could you could put that together and then send it to Tobias and have him look at it to make sure it makes sense to us on our side.
Okay, because I think that's the part that I was missing. I was only putting what we really spent, but that's why it wasn't really adding up right yet.
Yep, that's a common issue everybody has. So.
Okay.
All right.
I got something to add here.
Oh, Toby.
Something else that I've noticed with the FY17 final reports, it was helpful for me to see the individual revisions and the changes that were made. For instance, if something from goal 1 was moved to goal 2 with a revision, there was just revision number 1 minus $1,500, and then in revision 2, revision 1 plus $1,500. That was helpful for me. If it's going to cause more work for you, don't worry about it. But illustrating those revisions on the individual lines was somewhat helpful for me.
On the first column.
Correct. And where it says goal 1, goal 2.
Yeah, like an explanation under the budget item column. That first column where you would put your activity. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that you're not messing with your numbers, but you're showing us what your numbers are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and again, if you have any questions or need to try to modify this to help you better, you just shoot us the sample, and we are happy to give feedback on that.
Yeah, and if what you're doing is fairly clear, you can do it in whatever way works best for you. It's just the fact that we don't want to see money disappearing or
Yeah.
just popping up somewhere.
Yeah, the whole purpose of these documents is a paper trail for all of our protection. Okay, so the next slide that we go to is just a little bit of the highlights of what we're talking about. The original budget column does not change. The 12-1 column will change if needed by revision between July 1st and December 1. So also remember, after December 1, you'll be working in the next column. So if you do revisions, that cause money to move from one goal to the other, you'll be using the next column on your budgeted breakdown of expenses. The budgeted breakdown of expenses is a budget until the final report, and the amount of the breakdown of expenses that you turn into KBOR should always total the grant amount. So, and again, if you have questions when you're working on these, we're more than happy to work with you on that. The next part of the budgeted breakdown of expenses is section B, and sometimes people forget this section altogether. And so this is just a reminder to fill out section B. The first part is personnel. Make sure you list any salaries or wages that you're paying personnel there. The budget columns on the 7-1-17 and the 12-1-17 work just the same as A. Equipment, list that there. Administrative expenses. And then when you turn in the progress reports, you don't need the president's signature, but we do need your signature as the preparer. Some institutions, since the business office is preparing these forms, they have the person in the business office sign it, or you as the Perkins coordinator can sign it. However it works best for your institution on that. And again, just don't forget section B. The preparer signs it, and your president does not need to sign it. Now we moved on to the slide about the budget matrix, and this just has some arrows on it to remind you this is the December 1 report. Please mark that, because we're dealing with 26 different reports coming in, and sometimes we use the same printer, and we want to make sure we're getting the right one. And that's why it's always important too to have your institution's name on these documents. Now this one is the one that is your actual spending or encumbered amounts. So it won't add up to your total grant unless you've spent all your money already. And so this one is the one that will reflect how much you've spent, and we will use this document to see where you are on your spending, because we want to see you spending at least 25 to 35% at this time, if not more, especially if you've encumbered your equipment. If you're at 10% or something, we're going to be asking some questions just to see what's going on. And again, this is actual spending and encumbrances. So if you've ordered your equipment before December 1, you can put that on here. Down in the lower left column of area of this document, it says total requested Perkins dollars. So during the beginning of the grant to 12-1, we need to know how much you've drawn down from our system. And so this kind of just assures us that you are indeed talking to your business department about drawing down the funds. And again, it'll be kind of a red flag if we see that you haven't drawn anything down yet, because you should be trying to make some monthly draws. I know at the beginning sometimes spending's a little bit slow, but you should have drawn down a fair amount by now. And again, this one has the preparer's signature. It can be you or the business office, and you don't need the president's signature. Are there any questions on this document? Okay, and there's, again, just I'll list out a few things, because some people are probably just reading the PowerPoint and not on here today, but it's the total requested. You don't have to show the total requested Perkins amount yet. I mean, you show the total requested. So your actual spending and encumbrances will probably be more than what you've drawn down. Does that make sense? So don't be startled if you are showing more spent or encumbered than what you've drawn down, because you wouldn't have drawn down what you've only encumbered yet. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
Clear as mud.
Clear as mud to everybody. Again, don't hesitate to contact us as you're working on these and ask questions. On your December progress report, you need to turn in time and effort. So this first form is the personnel activity report. That first column is the non-federal part, so that would be where you account for either your time or you can either use a percentage or hourly time on these, however you want to report it. The first column there where it says non-fed is anything that's not Perkins, and then the local basic grant is your Perkins column, and that's where you would account for your time. Some of you are working on more than one cost objective, especially when you're putting the grants together, but you're getting paid out of administrative fees for that, and this is where you would say, 25% of your time was spent on Perkins related activities. And we did have a question today that would also include, like, if you're coming to the conference, when you came to the conference, that would be counted as part of your Perkins money. Any questions on that form?
So if we're not getting paid with any Perkins money, do we still do time and effort?
No, you don't. You only have to do that if you're getting paid with Perkins funds.
Because I don't get paid with Perkins. I just work on the Perkins grant, so I've always wondered if I have to do that part or not.
No, you don't have to do it.
Okay.
No. If you think towards the end of the grant you may end up paying some of your salary with administrative fees, you may, keep an idea of what you're using, but if you don't get the money, you don't have to report on it. Does anybody have any questions on who uses the personnel reporting form and who uses the semi-annual certification? Okay. The next document we're going to show is the semi-annual certification, and on this one, it's just done twice a year, so you do it partially through the year and then again at the end of the grant year. And these are for people working on a single cost objective. So if you have Perkins funds for a faculty member working on Perkins, like on a Perkins approved program, then this is what they would do, because the cost objective, even if they're not 100% paid by Perkins, their cost objective is still all the same thing. They're still all of it. All of their work relates to Perkins, and this is kind of confusing, and we do have a better explanation in the handbook. Hopefully, I keep trying to add information so that everybody figures that out. When you do the semi-annual certification, you should have that in Word. If not, it's online in the supplemental packet. But change the name so that not everybody that works for you is Jane Doe. Change the time period so that it's the right time that they work for you, and then Perkins, you should have, not on state administration, but you should have, on Perkins or whatever the program is that they're teaching, etc. Some of my institutions don't like to turn in this semi-annual certification on their December 1 report because they don't feel it's truly halfway through the year because the semester has not ended. So if you want, you can wait and turn this in on your March 1 report. Just make sure it reflects the correct time period. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you do that, please, in your email as you're submitting your documents, let us know that you're doing that, so we won't be calling you and going, hey, where's that time and effort? If we know that you're going to not turn it until March, that's very helpful. Again, that's only for this semi-annual certification. The other one you need to turn in during this report. And if you have, unfortunately this happens to a lot of you guys, it's just the way it is, but you have faculty leave before you get them to sign one of these. They've gone on back to industry or whatever. The supervisor can sign it for them, so you don't have to despair about that. And just don't forget that some of the faculty rolls down. So like if this is the second year faculty for Perkins and they're only getting paid 2/3 of their pay out of Perkins, they still do this form. Does that make sense to everybody? The time and effort forms? Okay. And again, this is just a reminder on this slide that we do have time and effort information in the handbook, and hopefully help explain it out a little bit. The next slide that we're showing is the progress report checklist, and this is just basically information for you so you know what Tobias and I are looking at as we are looking at your grants. And we will try to fill out information and notes on this for you to help you out for the next one. But we look to see if we got the report by the deadline. We look at the matrix report and see what it's looking at. The matrix especially, that's where we'll check the percentage spent on the grant. We look at the activity and progress reports, budgeted breakdown of expenses. Make sure that your equipment is purchased or encumbered. So if the reports aren't showing that the equipment has been at least encumbered, you may also want to include that in a note in your email to us saying, the RFPs are out, but the board hasn't chosen the equipment, or, whatever is happening, as long as we know that you're working on it, because don't forget the equipment has to be purchased or at the very least encumbered by the end of the year. And so I know that's kind of a stretch because you can't spend more than 25% of your grant before October 1st, and a lot of you have some lengthy RFP processes. So hopefully you're all working on that to get your equipment spent. But just let us know what's going on, and that's helpful. Time and effort reports, and then again, the percentage of the total budget used by December 1st. And we'll give you feedback on all of that. Does that make sense? That's kind of just a real quick overview of what the reports are and what we're looking for. Does anybody have any questions? So, I think Tobias wanted to say something.
Yeah, this is also a good time to open up the Appendix P and Appendix Q in the final report as you're starting to get your equipment coming in before it goes out to the different programs. If you can get the serial number, model numbers, if you have, for something that's less than $5,000, if you have your own marking system, it's a good time to do that. Especially with highly walkable items, one of the key points for that is if something should happen to walk away with a student, then you have the serial number and a description that you can give then to put it on your police report. And then also any items, that individual items that cost $5,000 or more will need an equipment tag, and there's a request form process for that too. So now is a good time to start getting familiar with that process if you haven't done it yet. And if you have done it, now's a good time just to do it now as equipment rolls in, so you're not having to scramble at the end of the final report season.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you. Yeah, and you can you don't have to wait till the end of the year to turn in your equipment request. I mean, you don't have to have all of your equipment. You can turn in several reports. We're fine with sending out one tag at a time if we need to. Just to save you some time. But yeah, that is something that gets cumbersome if you wait too long on it. So thank you. Does anybody have any questions or answers?
I have a question for you.
Okay.
We have a piece of equipment that is actually under $5,000, but when they add the other pieces to it, it actually is over $5,000. So now do I need to have a Perkins tag on it? Because both pieces of equipment have been purchased with Perkins funds.
And together they make like a simulator, or
yeah, it's like a drone, and I can't even explain all this to you, but
so you've got the
part
drone
of it,
and the camera, right? I think.
Right. So they ordered, two separate pieces, but then it's like Matrice 100, but when you put it all together, it's Matrice 200. So.
Right.
I think this is a little bit of gray area where it just kind of depends on how your institution identifies it. If there are two separate pieces of equipment that are less than $5,000, and you can justify keeping those two separate pieces of equipment listed in two separate lines, then I think it's up to the your institution how you want to handle that. However, if the two pieces of equipment are, for instance, the illustration that Laura just gave, if there's multiple small parts that add up to a big thing, like a simulator or some sort of individual components that are meant to work together, it's probably a good idea to keep those components together, and B, have a Perkins tag that oversees all of that. And one of the ways you can do that is have some sort of a plaque or some sort of card in the room that says this simulator was provided by Perkins, and then you have the tag number on the wall on that plaque, identifying that those pieces of equipment as one collection.
Yeah.
But again, it's hard to give a blanket statement and to be correct all the time. So if you have individual questions about it, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I've had someone just send me their invoice to see if, an invoice that had several items that were each under $5,000, but the collective of the invoice was over $5,000. Well, each of those smaller items is what we're looking at, not the one purchase, not the one invoice. So in those instances, please, give us a holler, show us an invoice. We'll help you decide how you best want to tackle that.
Yeah, it is gray, like you said, and now they're connected, so you could argue both ways. But I could also say that's probably a very highly walkable item.
Right.
And we have had institutions that buy things that come up less than $5,000, but they feel a little more protected to have our tag on there in addition to whatever your tracking system is. And so we will give you tags for things less than $5,000 if you want. And again, like Tobe said, that's up to you. A lot of that. But when you do look at the federal regs, they do expect you to have a tracking system. Just because we don't have a tag requirement on it, they still may expect you to know where it is if they come visit. I hope that helps, Britta. Sorry, I know that is a gray area. Any other questions? And if you're missing documents or anything, don't forget that, they are on our website. I've opened up the website just so you can see, but Kansas Board of Regents, Workforce Development, Perkins Grants. The application packet's there, the supplemental packet that we mentioned with the equipment tag information is there, and then your final report packet. So all of that is there, and up at the top is the latest handbook. So if you didn't make it to the conference and didn't get the latest, we did update it again in August. So you want the handbook that says 2018, and then it says September 2017 on the front cover, so that you have the latest handbook with the latest information. Any other questions? Okay, well, we appreciate everybody logging in and taking part in this, and hopefully it's helpful. And please don't hesitate to contact us as you work on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.